To some, co-parenting after separation actually works better than when they were together. For others, it's a nightmare. Every single time they need to communicate with their ex, it can be absolutely horrible and traumatic for everybody involved. So how can people nurture good communication to ensure good co-parenting, Nardine?
Okay, let me say at the very beginning, this is easier said than done. I understand it's really easy for me to sit here and say this to you, but if you can just take it that this is from years and years of experience and this is really the thing to do, and it's to let go of the emotion. There's a Zen proverb that I really like. It's called let go or be dragged. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, but I love it.
Yeah, I Googled it. You'll find all sorts of weird things on Google. A tattoo, if you're so inclined. Lots of stuff about drag, which got me a bit distracted until I refocused. But basically, it's what it says. Let go of the emotion, let go of the past, or it will drag you down. There's nothing you can do about the past. It's done. There's nothing you can do about how that person treated you or how you felt in the relationship. It's done. If you keep holding on to that emotion and how you feel about that person, you're never going to be able to communicate with them. If every time you look at that person, all the hate and fear and anxiety comes up, you're never going to be able to talk to them about anything.
No.
So that's as simple as it is. It's a very, very hard thing to do, but as soon as you can try and remove the emotion from how you feel about that person based on the past, then you'll be able to establish what we call a business-like relationship. So what I say to clients is, you can be in partnership or work with someone that you really can't stand them. Right? You don't like this colleague that you work with, but you're professional with them in the workplace and you get the job done, even though you don't like who they are as a person. It's the same thing. If you can treat your ex-partner as someone that you don't like them, that's fine, but you're treating them professionally, respectfully, in a business-like relationship, especially in relation to children, you will find it so much easier to communicate. So that's my number one tip, is to establish a business-like relationship in moving forward and co-parenting. The second thing is to improve your communication, so work out a way of communicating with each other. If you don't want to sit in the same room and look at each other, work out some other means. You're going to email, you're going to text, there's Talking Parents and other sorts of apps that we talk about in a later video. There's ways of communicating with your ex-partner that will make it easier for you to have that process of communication. And then the third thing is consistency. So ideally you and your ex-partner work out consistent parenting. You know, what time do the kids go to bed? What are their activities? What are your rules about social media? What are your rules about games? What are your rules about all sorts of things? If you can establish consistency and a set of rules that you both abide by, firstly it means there's less things you have to communicate and argue about, and it also gives you a stable basis to move forward with your co-parenting.
Because that's the thing, like when you were in the same house, there was one set of rules for the kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's where parents do come unstuck, is when they're in two separate homes.
Yeah.
They've got two different ways of living, and that's where it makes it difficult for children. The transition for when they go from one parent to the other can take days.
Yeah. It does, yeah.
And that's where I think parents need to not do this for them, it's doing it for the children,
Yeah.
and that's what they forget.
That's right. I say to clients, imagine if you had two jobs, and in one job you could do what you like and your boss was really laid back and cool, and then your other workplace it was really strict and you had to do things a certain way. Even as an adult you would struggle with that completely different environment. So no wonder
And that's adults with strong emotional capabilities and mentally they're strong enough to deal with that.
That's
but kids
right.
definitely not.
Kids just can't. Kids need consistency. You know, when you were together, you probably had what you called a united front with your child. No, darling, your mummy says no, so don't go running off to dad to ask him. And ideally, you're both presenting a united front and saying the same things when you're parenting. And you have to keep doing that, even though you're no longer a joint unit. You have to keep having
Doing
those
that.
same
Even if
goals.
you disagree still.
Even if you disagree, you have to try and agree to disagree and do what you think is best for your children.
I love it. Because I think that's one of the things with children as well, is they do know how to play parents.
Oh, of course they do, yeah.
But they also...
Yes. Every parent out there knows that. Yes.
Yeah, and I think also children are very intuitive, so they won't want to tell their mum, I've had a really good time at dad's house. And, you don't want your children starting to feel like they have to play a game and be a chameleon, I guess, to their parents so that they're accepted as well and not upsetting either of the parents.
Yeah. So that comes back to taking out the emotion, just dealing with things in a practical way, in a business-like way, talking to your kids in that same way without all of the emotion and the hate and stuff coming back into it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what are some tips then on what not to do?
So it's the same thing. What not to do is to keep the emotion boiling all the time, to think about this all the time, to have it become a complete focus of your life, how horrible it was when you were together. You just got to let it go. If you keep that emotion boiling over, it will come out in how you deal with everybody and particularly your children, and it will make it really difficult to work out your co-parenting relationship with the other person.
So it's being respectful, I guess, as much as you possibly can, like you were two people in a workplace.
Yep, respectful and no abuse, and keeping the children out of your dispute.
And not using them to vent to, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So what does happen though when people get it wrong?
Well, when they get it wrong, it just keeps going. So it goes on and on. Because you can't communicate, you can't resolve things, because you don't trust what the other person's saying. They might want to put a proposal to you to resolve things, but you don't trust it, so you won't agree to it. So it just prolongs things, it makes things so much harder, it makes it harder just in everything you do in your day-to-day life when you've got this big dispute hanging over your head. And it just makes it harder to parent your children the best way you want to, because you haven't got the support of the other side, or you haven't got things sorted out between you.
And it can last generations. I mean, I know for me, personally speaking here, my parents, I call it the 40-year divorce, because they're still carrying on like they're going through a divorce. And it goes into the grandchildren now. So now family gatherings and things like that are always awkward. And I think that's really sad, that parents can't just go, you know what, we had 2 children together and that's the best thing that we got out of our relationship, and let's just do the best we can for these kids so that their weddings, 21st, and when they have children one day, it's all, we can still be a united front and be there for those people. So
that's right.
So co-parenting can bring out the best and the worst in people, but with sufficient communication and effort, it might just work out better for everybody.
Yes, it can. And just on that point, it always makes me laugh that people come and they tell me that because they've separated, the other parent is now a really good parent.
Yeah.
They've had to step up, they've had to do things, whereas before they probably just, according to the person telling me, they did very little, which could be true, but once they've separated, they've had to really step up and take a proper parenting role, which can have, it can be a good outcome
for the children and for you as well. So if you're after a family lawyer to assist you through this time, get in touch with the team at Collier Lawyers today. Nardine would love to help you.